All right, peeps, I'm getting a little concerned because there's definitely some people who have not even begun their body paragraph organizer, which was due before the break. And then there are also people who started it but didn't finish it. So, in case you're just like not doing it because you're confused or because you're behind, first of all, it's really important that you catch up because you've had a lot of time. But second of all, I want to explain and make sure you understand everything. So, here I am in writing period 4, and I'm going to pretend that I am a student for a second. And so I'm going to go to classwork and I'm going to go to body paragraph organizer. And then I'm going to, let's see, where am I going to go here? I've got down here a student named, oh my gosh, a student named Sarah Whitman. I know her. So I'm going to open up that Sarah Whitman assignment. I added myself to our class, so I look like a student. So here we go. So I'm doing that. And obviously, if I am going to be doing this, I need to have an annotated copy of the story I'm annotating, like it's got to be easily findable. So I got to start by doing the title and author of my text. So for you, that might be everything will be okay. It might be thank you, ma'am. For me, we're going to do it with, whoopsies, we're going to do it with Raymond's Run. So I'm going to start by going where it says title and author of text, and I'm going to write Raymond's Run by Tony Cade Bombara. And if you don't know the name of the author of your text, or if you're not sure how to spell it, always, always, always go back and check. Never just hope you get lucky. Like, go back and check. Okay, so here I am, I'm writing that, and I'm going to write my claim, and then I'm also going to just highlight if my essay has a chronological structure or a claim-based structure. So if I go back to a few presentations ago. Hold on, let me pause here for a second. Okay, sorry, back in action. I also literally was today years old when I discovered, well, I think I knew it, but I never did it where I like paused my video and then continued. But anyway, okay, so here we are. We're in our body paragraph organizer, and I've written in the title and author of my text. Notice it's a short story, so notice I put it in quotation marks. If it was a full-length novel, I would put it in italics instead, which is like the slanty letters. But it's a short story, so it's going in quotes. Now, my claim about Squeaky is that she is protective, and because I remember what I learned about claim statements, I know I have to include the tag, the title, author, and genre. So I'm going to say in the short story, Raymond's Run by Tony Cade Bombara, the main character, Squeaky, is protective. Maybe I'll even say is extremely protective. Whoa. And so this is a claim where I'm basically arguing that Squeaky is protective for the whole story from beginning to end. So it's not a chronological structure because a chronological structure would show that Squeaky has changed. So I'm actually doing a claim-based structure where I'm showing that Squeaky is a certain way for the whole text. That's the whole time she's protective. So I'm going to just highlight here that I'm doing a claim-based structure. So remember, if you're talking about how the character has changed from the beginning to the end, if you're saying Squeaky went from being this way to being that way, it would be chronological. If you're talking about a way they are for the entire text, it's claim-based. So if I'm going to argue that Squeaky is extremely protective, my body paragraphs are each going to be about one of the reasons or examples that show that she's extremely protective. So for my first one, it says topic sentence with transition. So a transition basically means I'm not just going to be like, Squeaky does this. I'm going to start with some kind of a statement or a phrase that gets me from the former paragraph to this one. So often for transitions, we just use something like one way that Squeaky is protective, or one example of how Squeaky is protective is. Could do it either way. So I'm going to use that second one there. I'm going to say one example of how Squeaky is protective is that she, and now for you guys, you annotated and read those stories. You should be able to go back into your story. Here's mine. And you should have a ton of annotations, all those little comments you wrote about things you notice about the character. We're going to pretend that I did that to this text. It doesn't have annotations in it, but yours should. Um, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say one example of how Squeaky is protective is that she watches out for Raymond when they run through the city together. So that's one way she's protective. I'm going to make sure I have 3 reasons or 3 examples before I go in and get all my evidence together. So I know one way she's protective is when she watches out for Raymond when they run through the city. And then for my topic sentence here, I'm going to probably start by restating the claim with another transition. So I'd say, Another way that Squeaky is protective, so I'm still using my claim, I'm restating my claim, Squeaky is protective, but now I'm going to give another reason. So this is going to be the topic of my second body paragraph. So another way that Squeaky is protective is, and I got to go back into the story and see if I can find a good example of when Squeaky's protective. So she protects Raymond. Let's see. This is the part where I know where she like protects him the first time. I'm going to highlight that. You would probably already have yours annotated, but I do not, so I'm going to highlight that. And then let's see. Um, she's also protective when those um, girls are talking to her, and she kind of um, like down here when one of them says, "What grade you in now, Raymond?" And she responds and says, "You got something to say to my brother, you say it to me." I'm going to highlight that because that's another example of where she's really protective. So I'm going to say, go back to my organizer. Another way that Squeaky is protective is that she speaks up for Raymond, or she will say let's see, she doesn't let other people say anything unkind to her brother. So that's another way she's really protective. Somebody tries to talk to Raymond and she doesn't think they're being kind. She's like, that's protective. So that's going to be my second example. My third example, I know in my head from the story, is going to be at the end when she thinks about like maybe coaching Raymond and she thinks like maybe he should have something for himself. That's really protective too. She wants her brother to have an experience. I think that can count for something. So let's see. I think that's down near the end. And oh, here we go. I've got a room full of ribbons and medals, and what has Raymond got to call his own? Okay, I'm going to just highlight that kind of general part so I remember for my evidence later. Then I'm going to go back to my organizer and say a final way, or a final way that Squeaky is protective is that um, she wants to give her brother opportunities to succeed. So she's protective, that she wants to give her brother opportunities to succeed. Maybe we'll even say in spite of his um, struggles. So now I know that I have three examples of how Squeaky is protective. That's really important. I don't want to take any more steps until I know I have my three examples. Or for a few of you, it might be two examples, but for most of you, it's three. So now my next step is to go back and find evidence for each one. And not just evidence, but I have to explain my evidence. I have to explain my thinking to the reader. So for this first one, I'm going to go back to how she watched out for Raymond when they run through the city together. I guess it should be watches out for Raymond. Whoops. So now I'm going to go back to that part of the text and find the evidence for how she watches out for Raymond. And I highlighted it, and hopefully you'll have your evidence highlighted too. So I'm going to find that part. And this is a big chunk of highlighted text. I don't want to use all of that because that's a lot. I want most of my essay to be my words and my thoughts. It should just be only the most important parts that I'm quoting. And remember, we'll learn about this more in class, but there's lots of ways to cite evidence. You can do it in quotation marks and write it exactly the way the author did, or you can tell the reader in your own words what happened in the text. So it's really good to have a mix of different options. So sometimes use a direct quote, and sometimes you paraphrase or tell it in your own words. And that keeps your writing a little more interesting, and it also, um, you know, shows that you know how to present evidence in different ways. So let's see. This is where I want the part where she helps him. She has him go inside the curb. Oh, here we go. Okay. So let's see. I've got Raymond walking on the inside, close to the buildings, and the curb. Da, 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 da. Okay, so I'm going to choose this part here about where she helps him by keeping him on the inside of the curb so that he doesn't like get hit by a car or kind of jump into the street or anything. So that's pretty important where she's making that choice to do what protects him. So I'm going to go back to my organizer, and where it says evidence, I'm just going to put a quotation mark and then I'm going to paste what I just found. Oops, and put quotation marks on either side. Now, this is still a pretty big quote. I might not use all of this, but I'm putting it in here now so that I have it. And that way I can pick and choose the parts I want to share when I'm writing. So then down here where it says explanation, I've got to explain how does this quote show that Squeaky is protective? So I could say something like, Squeaky, let's see, in this part of the story, Squeaky shows that she cares a lot about keeping Raymond, we'll say keeping her brother Raymond safe. She knows that if he's too close to the street, he might hurt himself or someone else. So she makes the decision to, or so she positions herself as a barrier between her brother and possible danger. And then I want to, again, continue on my thinking. Give me all the thinking you're happening. So I might say something like, some siblings don't care very much about keeping, I'll say some young people don't care very much about keeping their siblings safe. But Squeaky obviously wants Raymond to be protected. She, what else? I guess that's probably good for now. And now I wonder, are there any other pieces of evidence I might want to include to add on to this one reason, this one topic sentence that is, she watches out for Raymond when they run through the city together? Do I have other pieces of evidence from that moment in the text? And let's see, we do have the part about the elderly. There's the part about Squeaky getting hit if Raymond's pants get wet, if he like goes into the curb or something and his pants get wet, Squeaky gets hit. But I don't know if I want to include that because like it's not like I want to say it didn't happen, but I feel like it doesn't stay focused on the important thing, which is that Squeaky is protective of her brother. So I don't think that evidence is going to be as helpful for the argument I'm trying to make, that Squeaky is protective. Um, let's see here. She says, so I keep Raymond on the inside of me and he plays like he's driving a stagecoach, which is okay by me so long as he doesn't run me over or interrupt my breathing exercises. So, I could maybe use that. Wouldn't be the worst thing to maybe at least have it as an option. So I'm going to copy that too. I'm going to go back to my organizer and under additional evidence, I'm going to paste that. But highlights around, or I'm going to get rid of the highlight there. Don't need that. So now I have another quote. Now if I want to have another quote, I have to also explain that one. So I might say something like, even though Squeaky cares a lot about being a fast runner, she still makes her brother a priority. This says a lot about her because we know how much running matters to her. And so my wrap-up sentence is where I kind of want to restate my claim again that Squeaky is protective. So I could say something like, these examples show, or maybe I'll say, Squeaky's decision to keep her brother safe during their runs shows that she is a protective sister. Or I could say a protective person. So now I have all this information in here about my first paragraph about how Squeaky is protective by watching out for Raymond when they go for runs. So this whole paragraph is focused on how she protects him in that one situation. And I want that whole paragraph to be just about that one thing. Now, my second body paragraph is another way that Squeaky's protective. And now I'm talking about the scene where she doesn't let people say mean things to her brother. So now I've got to go further in the story and find evidence for that. Evidence for her, evidence where she basically doesn't let other people say mean things about Raymond. So down here, I highlighted this part where Mary Louise asks Raymond a question, and Squeaky basically says, like, you got to talk to my brother. You want to talk to my brother, you got to talk to me. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to copy and paste it into my evidence. And this is an example of, like, again, I'm gonna paste it in here like this. There it is. But I might not use it exactly as it's written. I might instead describe the conversation without actually using the quote word for word. So I'll decide that later. But here's my evidence. And so my explanation might say something like, in this scene, Squeaky seems to be concerned that Mary Louise is going to make fun of Raymond. Squeaky doesn't even give Mary Louise a chance to do that. Instead, Squeaky tells Mary Louise that not to talk to. This is getting vague pronoun-tastic here. So instead, Squeaky tells Mary Louise to leave Raymond alone. And I'll say, in fact, Squeaky speaks up for Raymond because she is his protector. Now, is there more evidence of this where Squeaky's basically telling people, like, you know, don't mess with my brother? Let's see, I'm gonna look here. It looks like the scene kind of shifts a little bit later. So, yeah, it looks like that's my only evidence for that one. So I'm not going to worry about my additional evidence and explanation here, but I do need to have a wrap-up sentence. So I could say something like, only a, or let's say, Squeaky is obviously protective because she stands, or um, she defends her brother against anyone who tries to, who, let's say, who might want to hurt him. Okay, now I hope you're seeing this is kind of a long video because this is a process. Like, this isn't something you're just going to figure out and do in 3 seconds. You've got to take your time and go through the story, find your evidence, enter it into this organizer. Now we're going to do the same thing with body paragraph 3, my last one. So this body paragraph says, a final way Squeaky is protective is that she wants to give her brother opportunities to succeed in spite of his struggle. So she wants to protect Raymond from almost like the world. I kind of want to say this a little differently. So a final way that Squeaky is protective is that she wants to protect Raymond from being left behind by the world. It's kind of a strange way to say it, but that's kind of what I mean. And so my evidence for this is where she starts talking about how, like, Raymond doesn't have anything to call his own, how he's got talent, he's got skills, and she could be his coach. So I think there's probably 2 pieces of evidence here. The part where she says, what does Raymond have to call his own? Yeah. So I've got a room full of medals and awards, and what has Raymond got to call his own? I'm going to copy and paste that. It's my first piece of evidence. Get rid of my highlight here. And then my other one I want to use is where she says something about, like, I could coach Raymond. So let's see, where's that part? I think it must be back a little before. Raymond would make a very fine runner. Oh, here we go. I can always retire as a runner and begin a whole new career as a coach with Raymond as my champion. Okay, so that's another good piece of evidence where she says I could be a runner. So under additional evidence, I'm going to paste that one. And I'm not done yet because I've got to add my thinking and my wrap-up sentence. So I'm going to get rid of that highlight there. And now I'm going to add thinking for each of these quotes. So this first one, we're going to say, in here, Squeaky, and by here I'm talking about the evidence I just gave. So I'd say, like, here, Squeaky, what would I say? Here, Squeaky realizes that the world isn't always as kind to people who have disabilities. She realizes that she has been given many talents and opportunities, while Raymond has not. Instead of just being okay with this situation, she becomes more determined to protect Raymond and give him the chance to succeed. And then down here where she says she could be the coach, that's kind of like the same type of evidence. So let's see, she could say, if Squeaky were not a protective person, she wouldn't be so concerned about Raymond's success. But based on what she says, she seems to want him to succeed, and she is willing to help him. This makes her, down here, maybe wrap up sentence. So Squeaky's determination to help Raymond succeed in the world shows how protective a sister she is. Okay, now my friends, I've got a very nicely completed organizer with lots of good evidence, and this is what you want to have ready to go in order to write your essay. Also, once you have this, your essay will be so much easier to write, like truly so much easier. So hopefully this was helpful. Sorry for all the pauses and hesitations, but I just wanted you to see the process in case you needed it. Please make sure this gets done. It should have been done before the break, so if you're behind, you've got to catch up. You're not going to be able to do this unless you've read and annotated your story carefully. And you're not going to be able to do this unless you've already come up with a claim about your character. So if you're behind and have a lot of catching up to do, it's really important that you go backwards and do the first steps so that you can get to this step and be in the right place. Okay? If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to help you, and I love you a lot. All right, bye-bye.